Hey, everybody, welcome to Chinwag Nation episode number 25. We are in our third episode of a four-part series on garbage in, garbage out, and we're talking about team development. Like, I don't know about you, man, but Steven, but this is like near and dear to my heart. This is something that I don't know, I think, naturally wired to do no matter where I'm at. But I'm excited to dig into it with you tonight and just kind of talk about your thoughts. And I think the goal of this series, right, what we've talked about is as a leader, what you invest in, you get out of, right? And I think that can be really hard if you're a leader
Absolutely.
to try to do everything, right? And so what are the things that you want to do well? And I think that's what this series is about and what we're trying to focus on. Um these these podcasts, video podcasts are our opinions. They don't represent past, current, or future employers. They're just us having a good chinwag, good conversation about these things that we're passionate about. And for those that join us or watch after, we look forward to your engagement and your questions and just your thoughts as we kind of dig into these things. And Steven, I don't know about you, like when you think about team development, and I know this is I think this is near and dear to your heart as a leader too. Like you love leading teams, you love leading people, you love the idea of helping people develop and grow. And I don't know, like when you hear the word is well, when you think about our series, garbage in, garbage out, and you think about this concept of team development, like what's the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, it's funny because the first thing that comes to mind to me when I hear team development is actually more of an emotional reaction of just, to your point, being a big people leader, right? Like it just fills my heart. But I immediately think about, and I'm glad that we don't do much prep before these conversations because it kind of puts us on the spot to just sort of.
Dude, I do like hours of prep, Steven. Like, what
Well,
do
that's great. I don't. Uh,
you don't do
I have
hours
no
too?
well, I have no idea what you're gonna ask and, what you're gonna bring to the table, so I enjoy that,
Yeah.
but, team development sounds so simple, and I think,
Mm.
many of us have probably experienced, like, what I would consider to be really simple cultural development or team development. Like, I immediately think of those pizza parties that we had, right? Celebrating everybody's wins.
Yeah, yeah. If you fill out the employee engagement survey, we'll throw you a pizza party if we get to 100%,
Yeah, yeah,
completion.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the culture, but it it's funny because when you asked me, I immediately didn't go to team itself. I like went as granular as possible from the team to the individual to before the individual even comes on.
Oh, okay.
And I think about like
Like
myself,
onboarding kind of a thing, or even before they onboard.
even before that, like what are the
Okay.
types of people that I'm going to hire and why?
Mm,
And um, because I think when we talk about team development and people development, it's important to talk about leadership and understanding where our gaps are, right? And
as
I
an
always
as an individual or as a team, like
understanding
gaps.
my gaps as an individual,
Mm,
understanding the gaps of the team, so both, because I don't know everything. Now, I'm pretty confident in my ability to be able to learn things, but I want people that can complement my strengths, complement in the statistical sense. And if I've got a gap, right, they can
mm,
probably fill that with their knowledge.
mm,
And then I think about how that applies to the strength of the team. And then I think about it at that individual level from the moment that either I join a team or somebody joins a team, the drastic impact that individual development can have on team development. And then bringing it into the team itself is to like, once you've developed sort of a core level of competency, expectations, culture, right? Like, then it becomes much easier to get buy-in on, I would say, those team development type activities.
is
Well,
that because everybody's aligned, like, and they're on the same page, or is it just because you're through the forming and storming aspect of things,
I think
and
it's a bit
and
of
you're
both.
into a rhythm?
I think it's a little bit of both. I don't know how many times this has happened to you, Brian, but I join a team and I immediately get a Myers-Briggs assessment or a DISC assessment.
No,
You know?
no, that hasn't happened. Like, I don't
Really?
the last time that happened to me was when I was like just starting out my state career, and we went through a whole bunch of like Stephen Covey speed of trust stuff, and then I did have a space where like I took a disc assessment. I think it was part of like a leadership series or a leadership course that was put on by the state. Definitely have had the communication styles, but one of the things that I love to do is I love to do strength finders. That's one of my
Yeah,
favorite ones.
I do like that one.
Yeah.
But I think the return on investment that you get for those types of activities is so much more if the team has developed together and understand why they're going about that
Oh,
activity, right?
totally, totally. With the I still use Stephen Covey's speed of trust stuff to this
Me too.
day.
Yeah,
And it's like it's sometimes it's I've had teams take like up to 9 months to get to like a trust, a trust space, where they're like where they can not only feel good about doing work together, but they can give each other like direct feedback,
for
and
sure.
it's not personalized. We
Yeah, that
have Kelly Bug and my lovely wife on with us tonight.
we got someone in the chat.
Our biggest fan. Maybe we have like a second biggest fan. So Kelly, you're going to be our second biggest fan. My son used to come to these, but he's not the second biggest fan anymore. But
That's
he's
fair.
still
Yeah,
he's still a big fan.
Axel.
At least my wife comes to these, Steven. What's up with that?
That's true. I mean, Johanna says that she loves seeing you all day. I I don't know if my wife shares that same sentiment, but I do.
I think she does. I think she does.
She
But anyway,
she's she's just juggling a bunch of little kids. But yeah, man, I like speed of trust. Like, not to just go down that rabbit hole, but the first speed of trust behavior, right, is talk straight. Um,
yeah, I love that one.
that
See something, say something, right? Like if you see something, just say it.
totally.
Just say it.
That could be so hard, right? And
Yeah.
unless you're developing a common understanding and common language around we're creating an intent for a high trust environment, sometimes talking straight won't get you the same outcomes that you were expecting. But if everybody knows that that's what we're trying to practice together and
Mhm.
why, right? Like, it just goes so much further.
One of my favorite like trust activities to do, like just it's so simple but so impactful. And I've had it go really, really well, and I've had it not go really, really well. So just throwing that out there. It's a simple activity, but it's really impactful. And that's just you take people in a room, right? And you could even actually just do this individually with somebody, but you can just ask the questions. What are some high trust things that I do that build trust with each other, with one another, or within our team? And what are some low trust behaviors? And just like asking, like, what's high trust, what's low trust, and seeing what comes with the conversation. And what I mean by backfire is like, you know, people people definitely can share sometimes, right? And it can be pretty intense. So
Yeah, for sure.
I know it's foundational. It's a big, right? Trust building and just big.
Yeah. Yeah. But what about you, man? I took us down a rabbit hole in that question, but
In terms of like what comes to mind, well, I mean, I put
yeah,
I put a few things in our tee up, right? Trust, which is one of those, and I think with trust, it's something that just takes time. Like I said, I've taken 9 months to get to a point where I had a team fully trusting one another. When they could see something, they said something. And one of the things that we did at the end of that 9 months is we did a SWAT on one another. And for those that are watching and don't know what a SWAT is, it's not like a SWAT team or something like that. It represents strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I actually got them to that point by allowing them to do one against me as their manager. I said, "Hey, let's start with me. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? what are my opportunities and what are my threats, and I let them do it with me, and then we work to a space where they could give each other that kind of feedback.
That's pretty cool.
And I knew once we got to that point, like the trust was there. And it was a lot of work though. I mean, we baby stepped, to that point. The other thing that comes to mind, you touched on it, which is culture. Like, what do we the like one of the most basic definitions of culture is, right, it's what are the norms that are there
Mhm.
day to day and moment to moment. And I believe that norms are culture is a direct responsibility of the leader of the team, like hands down. Like what you allow and don't allow uh can directly impact what becomes normal, right? What's accepted. So if you gossip, right, as a leader, your people are going to think it's okay to gossip. If
Yeah.
you hold people accountable for getting their work done on time, right, there's going to be a culture of people holding themselves and each other accountable, and that becomes a norm. And that's, I think, that also contributes to trust. um and I think that leaders in general, I think you brought up a really great point when you said, um who you select to join your team can also bring in new norms to that team. And so that's something that
Mhm.
comes to mind as well. But the last thing that I wrote down, and this is in, if you saw the tee up to this episode, it's having a we mindset versus an I mindset. And where, like, I think the most vulnerable and fundamental um examples of that is if I'm having a challenge as an individual, like I'm personally struggling, and people in my unit take it on as if it were their own challenge too, right?
Yeah.
They rally around, they lift me up, they support me. um they say, like, yes, I know it's really truly your problem to solve, but we're going to help you solve it. And I think when you have trust, when you have strong norms in place, and if you have a we versus I, you can truly get to that point where your team continues to grow, and to the point where like you get excited to show up to work. And I know that's not I know that's a challenge these days. I read probably more articles that where it's not exciting to show up to work than I hear about people like jazz, right, about showing up to work. But I think focusing on team and we versus I is a big part of that. And I think you touched on that when you said everybody has to care about team development, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I'd be curious, man. What is like one of the first things that come to mind, or one of the most important things that you can think of when it comes to the we versus I and how you show up
one of the most important things,
to sort of like instill that as a leader within your organization?
yeah, I mean, I think it's incentives are big, right? Like what gets rewarded, um, and what gets celebrated, and what gets kind of like the prize, whether it's a financial incentive or a pat on the back or a good job. Like those things that you reward become the things that people do. I believe that if what a leader says, what questions they ask, what they pay attention to, is a big part of how a team forms and develops. And so, if a leader is celebrating and rewarding and incentivizing we versus individual accolades, then you'll get that, right. It'll be something that people measure and the team measures, and really gonna tracks performance on, like, and so, like, that's I think that's a fundamental part of that. Like that's what comes to mind is it has to be something that's rewarded either through money or attention, and time from the leader.
Awesome. I was just curious.
Are you flipping it around on me because I tend to ask you the questions?
Yeah, I mean, like I thought, you know, all these hours of prep that you do, I might as well just throw
Oh
you off your
yeah,
feet.
yeah. I mean,
No,
I go ahead, man.
I was kind of thinking about it because, and why I asked that question was that there's a lot of times where it's important to use I language versus we language when it comes to accountability, right? And I'm
Mm,
thinking of myself as a leader, and what's like one move that I try to do to create a team like atmosphere. And a lot of times it's actually holding myself accountable, but creating a responsibility at the team level in the sense
mm,
that if there's an opportunity to showcase the talents of my team, and
yes.
especially if it's innovative or it's new, right? I volunteer in a way that allows me, with my level of decision making authority and my level of risk associated with my role, to take on the risk of, say, like a particular project, but holding my team responsible. And if we win, right, absolutely celebrating the heck out of that win, and
Yeah,
that it's the team's win, right? But if it goes poorly, right, I own the risk, not my team. And
sure.
I will take the accountability for that that misstep or that mistake or that failure to deliver, right? And then we'll coach my team as to what did we learn and how are we going to make sure this doesn't happen again, right? But protects them to be able to shine in a way that they can showcase their team's talent by taking sort of individual risk for the team.
I think that takes a lot of pressure off.
It does, absolutely.
And
I mean, we're
I
all
think you'll get a more productive team out of that. Kelly Bug, Kelly, Kelly Bug. I'm gonna say Kelly
Kelly.
Bug because my wife said Kelly Bug. But she said team goals versus individual goals, right? And I think that's kind of what you're calling out is there's a if there's a team aspect of things, like you're gonna take the heat if it doesn't necessarily go well. But then there's that individual breakdown if, in terms of thanks, Kelly Bug. Appreciate it. Um and right there's that individual, I think, follow-up conversation from the outcome no matter how it goes. Yeah,
Mhm.
this series is garbage in, garbage out. And if you've been around, for those that haven't, it's okay. But if you've been around data, right, this idea of data, like what you put into the system is what you're going to get out. So if you put in a bunch of effort and energy, thanks, thanks, my lovely wife. That's, she said, replying to Kelly Bug Wilson, definitely Kelly Bug. Thank you. I appreciate that confirmation. But what you put into things, like the effort that you put in, the time that you put in, the energy that you put in, that that directly results in the outcome, right? The quality of the outcome. And so we're talking about team development. And so if you're a leader of a team, it doesn't matter where it's at. Paid job, volunteer, church, uh, your home, your friend group, right? You're leading something. Um, what we're saying is focusing on trust, like putting a ton of time and energy into trust building, because it's one of those things that will ripple out into everything else, right? These things that we're talking about ripple out into everything else. The second thing is norms. Like, what are the norms of your home? What are the norms of your, volunteer group? What are the norms of your workplace? Those things that you personally allow, and that as a leader, but then also what your team allows. And then the last thing is we versus I. And we're saying if you have only so much time in the day, invest in trust building, invest in building strong norms, and invest in we versus I, because they will ripple out right into other areas.
And just I want to note that if you're an individual contributor or an IC, right? Like you will still do your best work if you can rally a team behind you. Whether it's it doesn't have to be direct reports. It can be a network of individuals who have shared interest in the work that you're doing, right? You may have absolutely no authority over them, but how can you influence without authority? I think is really important to think about as a strategy. And
Mm.
you get if you're a manager and you do have direct reports, like if you want to be successful, your team needs to be successful. Um, and so it's just important to think about that when your schedule is full and you've got back-to-back meetings all day. Are you scheduling that time to invest in your team?
I would, and this isn't like I don't. This is a generalization, right? This is just me looking back at my career, and I would say that when things get crazy and things get busy, people time, like what we're talking about, is usually what gets minimized, right, or reduced.
Absolutely.
Um, and I hear what I hear you saying is when things get crazy, when things get busy, you actually need to invest more time in that and rallying in that. Otherwise, you'll get on the other end of that busy work, and you'll either have stressed out, worried, exhausted people, or you might not have as good of an outcome as you would have had if you did rally people together and did spend more time on the people. There's
Like, are
go ahead.
you sure?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
please.
I can tell you when things pick up for me and my I call it social calendar. It's very strategic, right? Spending time grabbing coffee, spending time having one-on-ones.
Hmm.
When those start to become tentative, right, on my calendar, I
Mm,
feel very blessed that I've spent the time that I have investing in my network because I can't think of a time where I've had to cancel a coffee and somebody that was in my network for that coffee says, How can I help? What can I do for you?"
yeah.
And it's like that's when we talk about ROI, right? Even if I don't want them to have to help me,
Return on investment.
return on investment, right? Even if I
Yeah.
don't want them to help me, I
Mhm.
I
Which is
just
most of the
appreciate
time.
somebody.
Which is most
Yeah,
of the time.
I'm pretty stubborn about that. But it lifts my spirits knowing that people have my back,
Yeah.
right? Um, and there has been times where someone in my network has a very particular skill set that they could do something in an hour that would take me 8 hours, and I've asked them to help, and they've saved me a ton of time. And then I would always, try to return that favor.
Hmm.
So, just talking about the power of team development, network development, what that can mean.
Well,
Um,
we versus I.
yeah, exactly.
Like that sounds like. I think you bring up a really really good point. It's very rare for uh. Well, it doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor. So if anybody doesn't know what an individual contributor is or an IC, that's like you're not responsible for people, right? You're just responsible for you, yourself, and I and your job. But Steven's point is like you can actually reach out and actually form a team without actually having a formal organizational structure around that.
Yeah,
But you bring up a really good point, and Kelly Bug hit on this too, and that's you never know what someone can do unless you ask, and I think that's rare, right? I think it's not a common thing for people to ask for help. It doesn't even matter if you're a leader of people. I think it's hard to ask for help. It's hard to do that. But I think that's a thing we didn't have on our list when we put this together, and kind of those core things that are important for team development. I think um, you can't get to we versus I without asking for help. And you can't get comfortable asking for help unless you have trust.
yeah,
Right. And because there's I'm sure everybody's been burned or bit at least one point in their life, and you have that little bit of that muscle memory. It's like, how should I trust this person? If they help me, is it going to become something, you know, more than what I thought it was going to be? Yeah, it goes against our flesh, but it's important. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it doesn't help that we are in a country that is big on I, right? Versus we. To your point about the flesh, Kelly bug, but I think all those things play together. You have to be able to rely on them to trust them. Yeah, absolutely. But I think what Steven's calling out is you have to take that step, right? You actually have to do it sometimes without a past relationship or a past connection with that person. Imagine going back to what Steven mentioned when we first got on, like you're a brand new person on a team and you come from a team where it was about I, and it was like cutthroat and challenging and competitive and crazy. And you come to this team where like everybody's asking for help and helping each other. That's probably going to feel like culture shock. It's going to probably feel so shocking that you don't believe it's real, right? So there's a function of like bringing people along, especially if you're in that space where you do have that team dynamic, that team culture.
Yeah.
Risk before reward. Yeah. Um, I was talking with somebody about that this last week, Kelly Bug. They were needing to make a really, really big decision. And I asked them like, how big is your risk appetite? And I said, because if you have a big appetite, you could get a big reward, but you could also get a nasty outcome too. So um I think there's a little bit of a a leap of faith in there, I think sometimes too, when it comes to I think
Yeah.
what we're talking about.
Well, and honestly, I think trust is always built on a leap of faith. It can be a small or a large one, right? But until you've sort of blindly trusted somebody the first time and they've followed through, you're never truly going to know whether or not you can trust an individual. And they talk about that actually in the speed of trust. That you have to take that initial risk to develop trust, and that's why it can feel incredibly vulnerable. And it can take a long time to build trust with somebody, but it can take a second to tear it all down.
You there, Steven? You broke up for a second, man. I don't know if that was me or
Well, no,
we have
I'm,
we have
I'm
like we have like a no streaming rule in our house while I'm doing these, and otherwise, you know.
well, super weird. I think like it was 8 minutes ago.
Mhm.
It told me that the stream went down, and
Oh, really?
yeah, and I was like kicked off for like 30 seconds. But then I came on and you were still chatting. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. But it was like waiting.
Nah, no
It
way.
was like
This
waiting for the host
conversation's
to
been
join.
this conversation's been fluid this whole time.
Yeah, that's bizarre. Yeah, no, I've been because it told me like the host wasn't in the meeting.
Dude, I think we time traveled.
Could have been. I mean,
Big
we could talk
risk.
about how
What's
that
that?
we could talk about the physics of that if we want, but I don't know if the audience was signed up for a physics lesson today.
Probably not. Probably not. There's Kelly Bug's throwing out some biblical reference. Big risk, big reward is biblical. Let's see. And there's a story about it in Luke. Can't remember the chapter. Stephen, do you remember the chapter?
Well, I feel like there's an element of risk versus reward in all four of the gospels, in the sense that many of the disciples pretty much just were approached in the middle of their daily life and were told, follow me, right? Whether they were on a fishing boat or a tax collector or whatever, like uproot everything you know about yourself and follow this person you never met before,
Yeah.
right? And that in and of itself is a huge risk. But pretty big reward.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. For sure. Well, Stephen, I don't know, any as we wrap up here, any parting thoughts, any closing thoughts on team development, on these concepts of we versus I, trust and norms? Like if there's any parting words, anything that you would send folks off with, what would that be tonight?
I I feel like we haven't gotten too deep into the nitty-gritty on this one, and personally, I'm okay with that because the parting words that I would leave with leaders is that you should approach team development as such a priority that it's almost nonsensical to, or I should say, it is common sense, right? At least to me, that these should be things that you are always prioritizing because there's so much benefit and reward, right? In fact, the risk mitigation tied to team development is massive as well. Um, there's only so much you can do on your own. And I say that as a very stubborn, oftentimes independent contributor as a manager, where I oftentimes have a hard time asking for help. But when I do, it is, I mean, if it has bitten me in the past, I don't, uh, I don't remember because the good is far outweighed the bad. Um, it's just high performing teams. There's no replacement for, and I think if and we've talked about this in our culture talks before, but I throwing this out there to the public now, but I I'm pretty certain that like 90% of managers are not fluent in leadership, right? There's a difference between being a leader and being a manager. Just because you're in a leadership position or a managerial position does not make you a leader.
Hmm.
And if you can't develop followers, if you can't create a shared vision, if you can't empower and advocate for the people in your network, regardless if you have a team or not, right? You're going to have this Sisyphean effort of trying to roll that giant boulder up the hill, right? Um,
Mm.
if you want to be innovative and you want to mitigate risk, you want to accomplish a lot, um, you need to be a leader, not a manager. And you can't be a leader without team development.
I don't know
That's
if I can. I don't know if I can top that, man.
oh, that's sweet of you. I thought you were gonna
Can you help me? Can you help me say my part? Like I'm practicing asking for help.
probably something like, "Wah."
Can you help me say my part too, Stephen? I'm asking for help.
Whatever. You always have
That
great
was so
advice.
beautiful. That was so beautiful. No, I actually what I got stuck on a little bit is we didn't get into nitty gritty, and so I'm like, oh, what did Stephen like? What did he like for this subject? Like, what's the nitty gritty? Like, that's what popped into my head. So I might come back to you and ask you
Good.
what you meant by like what's nitty gritty. Um, I don't know. I would echo what you shared, man. Like even something as simple as look at your 40-hour work week. And I know that's kind of I know a lot of leaders, managers, supervisors, especially if you're salaried, you might work more than 40 hours a week, but look at your 40-hour week and literally total up the amount of hours that you're spending on people, whether it's your one-to-ones or with people or team development, and not just doing the stuff like thinking about it, planning it. And if you're not at least spending 2 to 3 hours a week at a minimum doing that stuff, then I think that's probably your first step is to carve out some time. And I think Steve, said untouchable time, right? It's time that you're always going to commit to every week. And there's a note that I wrote down here that we didn't get to talk about, but if you have the luxury of having meetings with your team, you are in charge. And I don't mean that you get to talk the whole time as a leader or a manager or supervisor. I don't mean that you dictate the entire agenda for the meeting, but you are in charge of the quality of that meeting. You are in charge of what comes out of that meeting. You sometimes help shape the focus. You sometimes help shape the energy. But if the meeting goes poorly, if the time goes poorly with your people, that's a reflection on you, and that's something that you need to take accountability for. And again, that that might mean that you carve out more time right during your week, but just a little bit of arithmetic, like just go total up the amount of time that you actually spend on team development, people development, and try to stretch yourself a little bit and give a little bit more time to that. So mine's a little bit more tactical,
No,
Stephen.
I appreciate it. I mean, I start my workday before anybody really gets online, except for the people that I'm managing on the East Coast, right? And I try to have an intentional 2 hours, and I don't encourage anybody to mock my approach to my calendar. But I always spend at least 2 hours doing my heads down desk work before what I call my people time, which is most of my workday. I want to be present in my meetings. I want to be present in my one-on-ones. I want to be intentional about setting time aside to grab those coffees, to go on those walks, right? Have the water cooler talk, um, and to prioritize my day to be able to make sure that those things are happening. Prioritize my week if it's Monday, on how I go about approaching that time because it's super important.
I've got a challenge for you before we hop off, Stephen.
Well, before you give me that challenge, since we have Kelly Bug here, I want to throw it out there that we always ask our guests to ask us questions, but there's a lag. So while Brian challenges me, if Kelly Bug has a question, feel free to put it in the chat. We're happy to answer it. But go ahead, Brian.
So the question is, what do you do if your people don't want to talk to you or engage with you? like like you set up time and they're just like, hey, cool. And they get off after like 2 or 3 minutes. They don't want to engage. They don't want to talk. They're not interested in touchy feely stuff, as they might say.
I mean, especially if I'm their manager, there's certain levels of accountability that fall on me when that's the type of reaction. One is and this is probably the one I should end with because sometimes being authoritative isn't necessarily received well, right? But you are accountable for a culture that you're trying to build, right?
Yeah.
And let's be honest, when you're in a leadership position, you have to assess your people. Are they performing and are they creating and adding to the culture in a way that you're trying to move that general direction,
Mm,
right? So now that the ugly part is out of
yeah.
the way, thinking about when anytime I start in a leadership position, I immediately prioritize an hour long one on one with each and every single person that reports to me. And I don't spend a ton of that time asking them about what their job is. That is part of it. I spend a ton of time trying to understand the history, trying to understand the individual, what empowers them, how do they like to be recognized, how has the culture of their previous environment impacted the stories that they're telling about their workplace. Because I've found that a lot of times, if I've had employees that are hesitant to open up to me, it's usually because they haven't been able to communicate in a healthy way with their leadership in the past, or potentially when they've been
Yep.
open in the past, they've had their hands slapped, right? And it could be that I'm not
Yep.
communicating in a way that resonates with them. So I really do try to make sure that
Yeah.
I've done my due diligence as a people-centered leader to understand who's the person behind the role, right? The work can remain constant, but the person isn't necessarily a constant. People can change within their roles, and people can be empowered. And how do I maximize that, right? As a leader. So if somebody comes in, right, and they're hesitant to open up, I would start trying to find ways to understand whether it's sympathetically or empathetically about why they're showing up that way. Be honest, I mean, I've had people that just want to clock in, clock out, get their paycheck,
Call it a
call it a
day.
day. And depending on whether or not the culture I'm trying to build is part of my overall strategy, right? And depending on the size of my team and how that type of behavior may impact the rest of the team, right? Then, sometimes I have to address it in a different way.
I think you exemplified what Kelly Bug put down, and that's to be a good leader requires first being a good servant. And she liked my question. And I think we actually have my lovely wife, Kelly Bug, and there's a third person. I think it might be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Steven, my family's showing up.
That's great.
Buddy.
That's great. Well, I considered you family, but at least now I know.
Yeah, I know. Organization here, Kelly Bug said, organization with people over profits model tend to end up more profitable than organizations who prioritize profits over people. Yeah, without a doubt. And that's why those organizations are really, really hard to get into and get a job at.
I don't know about you, Brian, but when I'm applying for a job, I actually look at how their culture is rated on how they're treating their people and what people have said.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That's why I let's see. What does this say? Great support. Oh yeah. Yeah. I forgot what you said, Steve. I'm sorry. I got distracted by the comments.
I love that we have a chat going with people. This is new.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, it's been enjoyable. Well, if there's any questions that you all have, we have a couple minutes before we wrap up. Would love to see them. Love the last. My aunt listens, but I think she puts the phone down. Oh yeah, my Auntie Edna. Yeah. But if there's any questions, we'd love to see them before we hop off.
Well, we throw that out there, dude. 25 episodes.
Oh yeah, this is our 25th. What did you send me? What kind of a prize did you send me, Steven?
Kindness and love.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, 25 episodes. I think I lost an episode in there though. I think I if you go look at the count of our episodes, I'm pretty sure I counted the same episode twice at one point.
Episodes where we logged in and you would just be a robot with the tech.
Yeah.
We'd shut it down. I don't know if we counted those.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure I counted. I'm pretty sure we have 2 episode 16s or 2 episode 17s. Something like that. But yeah, thanks for joining us, Kelly Bug and Auntie Edna and Johanna, my lovely wife, Joe Mama, for those that don't know. All right. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.